Hi guys, Fred Wellman with the MeidasTouch Network, host of On Democracy with FP Wellman. Well, reports are coming out of Florida that Ron DeSantis' little state guard militia is already stumbling on its face. And we've been suspicious of this thing for a while. A little background for you, and we'll get into the meat of it. The bottom line is that this last year, Ron DeSantis decided to revive the Florida State Guard. It was just perfectly legal. It's an organization that exists in many states. 17 states have state guards. Florida's went away in 1947 after World War II. It was used to augment and backfill the National Guard when they went off to combat. Generally, these forces are civilians. They're volunteers. They wear military uniforms as a military command, and they augment forces. For example, say a major security event like maybe the Super Bowl or a natural disaster like an earthquake. These guys can go in and do things like traffic control, checkpoints, unarmed, but as augmentation in the chain of command to give immediate manpower to the National Guard. Florida's National Guard is actually one of the smaller ones. They only have 12,000 troops. They're, I think, 53rd out of 54 of the National Guard. So they're actually fairly small. So there are complaints to be had about the size of the National Guard. But of course, Ron DeSantis doesn't do things any other way. Ron DeSantis does them the authoritarian way. And this state guard's got some real issues with it that have been raising questions. So this week, the Miami Herald and Tampa Bay Times came out with an expose of the first batch of training that occurred when 150 recruits showed up for training at Camp Blanding, being led by National Guardsmen, actual National Guardsmen they were training, and only 120 graduated as many veterans were resigning and leaving. And the story's got a lot of really interesting things in it. But before we get to that, I thought it'd be great just to use a great local news report from Tampa Bay Channel 10. Did a great report when they were looking to pass the new version of the bill, which expanded the Florida. So originally the Florida State Guard idea was 200 people with a $3 million budget. But Ron DeSantis didn't like that. His second iteration, which just passed on May 26th, he signed on May 26th, has room for 1,500 people and a price tag of $108 million. That includes, and I'm not shitting you, 4 helicopters and a large airplane, as well as 4 boats and surveillance equipment for civilian state guard that was really meant to be originally, supposedly, for disaster relief. But let's watch this Tampa Bay 10 piece. It's very good. It gives you the update what this is going on.
Vigilante militia to a secret police. Those are just some of the ways critics have characterized the governor's plan to revive the Florida State Guard.
Yeah, so tonight we are diving deeper into what it really is as lawmakers work to finalize more than $100 million to fund it. Then Tampa Bay anchor Josh Sidorowicz verifies how this state-run military force would work and who is ultimately in control.
The Florida State Guard.
Since the governor's announcement here in 2021 to revive Florida's State Guard, lawmakers have approved reactivation and right now are moving forward to finalizing funding. A verified viewer sent us this post from Reddit asking if this state military force would fall under the sole control of the governor. So, using the bill, state budget proposal documents, and Joseph Nunn with the Brennan Center, whose expertise is in military powers and constitutional law, let's verify. Florida's State Guard actually dates back to World War II, when it was the Florida Defense Force, created to replace Florida National Guard members who were deployed. These state forces are authorized by Congress, and nearly 24 other states right now, including New York and California, have them. Joseph Nunn with the Brennan Center says state defense forces historically are small and specialized because they are solely funded by the state. Governor Ron DeSantis, though, is looking to triple the ranks from the current 400 cap in state law to 1,500, with the proposed budget as it stands right now topping $100 million. Governor Ron DeSantis has argued it's needed to supplement the state's overworked National Guard, especially after natural disasters. But the bill is much broader than that, reading that it could be called upon to, quote, protect and defend the people of Florida from threats to public safety. And the bill's sponsor said that could mean supplementing any state agency from FWC to FDLE, even the governor's election police force.
I'm like, why not just increase FDLE personnel and funding?
This is a way that we can get a volunteer that'd be willing to lend their talents, their knowledge, skills, and abilities to the state of Florida without having to be full-time, without having the commitment of getting a salary from the state.
It will be headed up by a director appointed by Governor DeSantis, giving the governor, quote, final command and control, quote, at all times. But unlike National Guards, which the governor or the president have the power to activate, the president cannot call up a state guard. But does that mean that Florida's state guard then would only report to the governor, free of any federal oversight or intervention? Well, Nunn says that's where things get complicated.
So the federal law that authorizes state defense forces bars them from being federalized in the same way as the National Guard. But it's important to understand that that is purely a choice that Congress has made. Congress could amend that law at any time.
And Nunn says that the Supreme Court has previously suggested that is possible, while also acknowledging the Insurrection Act could allow the president to take control of the force. So, yes, a Florida state guard under state law would be under the control of the governor. But whether that power is totally immune to any and all federal intervention needs some context. With your Verify, I'm Josh Sidorowitz.
Another big difference between the Florida National Guard and State Guard, National Guard members are required to sign a contract. Florida State Guard members would not be.
So pretty interesting, right? They did a great job. By the way, I love local news. So at the end there, it was really weird, right? She mentioned that National Guardsmen signed contracts, but the State Guard won't. Now, there's layers to that. Let's talk about one layer of that.
Let's stop cutting down trees to make toilet paper. I mean, it's true. Humans are cutting down tens of thousands of every day just to supply the American need for toilet paper. And the worst part is that when you use trees for toilet paper, it's just one use and done. It can't be reused or recycled. It just goes straight into our water system. That's why I made the switch to real paper. You know, real is 100% bamboo. So we're using a plant that grows fast, can be harvested and regenerated like grass on a lawn, and doesn't impact entire ecosystems of forest. Real is the best kind of eco-friendly product because it doesn't feel like you're sacrificing something to help the earth. In fact, honestly, it feels like an upgrade. I'm really busy these days, so it's great to have it shipped free to my door in a plastic-free packaging. And I can schedule it on a subscription so that it comes exactly when I need it. And y'all, I'm super forgetful, as anyone who knows me knows, so I don't have to worry about picking it up at the store where I always forget. I'm a bit of an environmentalist myself too, you know, so I love that Real is now a partner with One Tree Planted. And with every box of Real that you buy, they're funding reforestation efforts across the country. So unlike other toilet paper products that cuts down trees, Real is actually helping to plant trees. Now, Real paper is available in easy, hassle-free subscriptions or for one-time purposes on their website. All orders are conveniently delivered to your door with free shipping and 100% recyclable, plastic-free packaging. Now, if you head to realpaper.com/Fred, sign up for a subscription using my code FRED at the checkout, you'll automatically get 30% off your first order and free shipping. So that's REELPAPER.com/Fred, or just enter the promo code FRED. Get 30% off your first order plus free shipping. Let's make a change for good this year. Switch to Real paper. Real is paper for the planet.
When any National Guardsman is deployed on state order, so as you know, they work for the state, but they can be deployed federalized, right? And generally when you hear the National Guard going to Iraq, that's federal orders. When there's a natural disaster, they federalize the National Guard. And the great thing about the soldiers who serve is they get federal benefits, TRICARE healthcare, credit towards the GI Bill. It's very good. But when they're on state orders, they don't get any of that. They're considered state employees. So recently, for example, a lot of the Republican governors have been deploying their National Guardsmen to the border of Texas, coordinating with Greg Abbott to show, how Biden's failing at the border. So they've been activating their guardsmen on state orders. For, like I said, Virginia, Glenn Youngkin and his vest, his co-governor, his red vest, deployed several National Guard troops down to Texas. What's really messed up about those orders is they're state orders. So these soldiers are actually considered state employees. Sometimes they don't get paid for months. And even more bizarre is if they get injured, they don't get TRICARE or military health care, they get workers' comp, right? So what do you do with civilians who don't even have contracts if they get injured? And that's where it gets really, really weird. And the Miami story did a great job of it. They talk about the fact they've created a special armed unit that, and I'm reading this, is vested with authority to bear arms, detect, and apprehend while activated. Those are police powers. But the training they did was just made up. So the whole thing is really fishy. So look, you're talking about use of deadly force. You don't just throw a volunteer civilian and give them a gun and put them in a situation they can kill. This is incredibly dangerous, not to mention dangerous to the public for an untrained person to be waving a gun around. But what really is strange is the chain of command for this thing. What DeSantis did, that's not like any other state guard, is they set the law up. It reports directly to Ron DeSantis. Now, while there is a director that runs it, the chain of command is not through the Department of Military Affairs, not through the adjutant general of the state. It's directly to the governor himself. He has his own little force. And let's talk about those directors. The first one was a retired Navy captain who was running it. He took his own life, unfortunately, in October. The police report says PTSD complications. They put the deputy director in charge after this man passed away. This guy was fired right before their first basic training class 2 months ago. So they're on their third director, looking for a third director. So right now there isn't one. It is just Ron DeSantis' little police force. And where it really gets crazy. So let's talk about Ron DeSantis' view of this thing, right? Again, a lot of these people signed up thinking they're going to be doing disaster relief type operation, setting up tents, directing traffic. Here's what Ron DeSantis' own governor's office put out for a statement. The governor also said that this state guard is designed so the Florida remains fully fortified to respond to not only natural disasters, but also protect its people and borders from illegal aliens and civil unrest. Illegal aliens. Remember, I told you they've added 4 helicopters and a large airplane. I mean, volunteers are going to fly helicopters and pilot a large airplane for free without a contract with the state. I mean, the whole thing's so hokey and so obviously political. The ACLU openly opposed this because of the fact there's no guardrails. He can do whatever he wants. And it's the classic situation, just like his book banning laws. They leave the law so vague, DeSantis can do whatever he wants, and it's perfectly legal. So now we've given a guy who is using his budget, his, by the way, COVID budget, to ship refugees and asylum seekers from Texas to Massachusetts. And they've given him the power of creating his own militia force that only answers to him in the law. Less than a third of the recruiters that they signed up originally to recruit members have already quit, that remain. Only 120 people have been trained so far because the whole thing is so ridiculous. One guy described the entire thing as I love this, I wrote this down, military fantasy camp. If you have any doubt about how political this is, and it's just really for political scoring points, scoring points politically, not just DeSantis, the state legislator you saw who sponsored this bill was in the first class of recruits. He's never served a day in the military or law enforcement at all, but he did his basic training, was there graduating in uniform with lots of pictures and the Speaker of the House there to cheer him on. This is really not great. But for me as an old soldier, what really gets to me is what I mentioned earlier. Military training is serious business, right? Before we even went to a range in the active army, we had an order, we had training standards, we knew what regulation we were training against to standard, what the qualifications were. The reports that Miami Herald, now New York Times, have picked up on shows that there's no such thing in these training. They've taken civilians off the streets. They're giving them classes on concealed carry of weapons, hand-to-hand combat, navigation in the woods. And at the end, they threw in a little bit of rescue types training. These people are untrained and being armed by the state. And the thing that makes us nervous, those of us who serve in the military, is we understand the power of state power if it's used improperly, which is why we have rules of engagement. It's why we have the Uniform Code of Military Justice. What Ron DeSantis has created with his lapdogs in the Florida legislature is an untrained, armed force that only answers to him. That should terrify anyone. And what should really terrify you is his motto for his presidential campaign is Make America Florida. I'll pass. So should you. The only good news is he's also incompetent because this thing's falling right in his face, just like his presidential campaign is too. We'll keep an eye on this for you here at the MeidasTouch Network, but not great. I'm Fred Wellman, host of On Demand with FP Wellman. I hope you check out new episodes every Friday night at 11 o'clock. Thanks.
Hey Midas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.